from Idaho. I've built up a good library of physical volumes, some from your store. Perhaps it would be helpful if you put out a recommended library list for everybody's library, both historical and spiritual books, in light of the eventuality of them becoming unobtainable. Mike in Idaho. So very true. I like the suggestion, and because you suggested it, I'm going to do just that. So I'm going to give you some recommendations of books that I believe that you ought to get. Every Christian library ought to have these books, and we carry all of these books in our online store at Liberty Fellowship EMT. So I'm just going to give you these in no particular order, but every book that I talk about is a book that I truly believe that you need to have, or I wouldn't have it in our library of books on our store. I just wouldn't have it. I get books all the time. Free books, people saying, Chuck, read this book, would you put it in your store? If we just wanted to be a bookstore, that would be so easy to do. There's people everywhere that want to sell books. I only put books in our store that I believe are, number one, important enough, that are in line with our message of liberty, and two, books that are for the most part ignored by evangelicals across the board. And so it's a special book to make our list. And so these books I really believe in, or I wouldn't recommend them to you. The first one, the book we just talked about, Remember the Liberty. This is the book that was written by the survivors of the Liberty, attacked by Israel, 1967. The subtitle, Almost Sunk by Treason on the High Seas. And this is a book that almost all of Americans know nothing about, and every American should know about. I had a Navy veteran who retired from the Navy. That means he spent over 20 years, and he told me he'd never heard about the USS Liberty. Never heard. The media's covered it up. Everybody's covered it up. These brave men have put their lives on the line, literally, to write this book and tell people the truth. I recommend this book, Remember the Liberty. This is Michael Hoffman's terrific book, Judaism, Strange Gods. Michael Hoffman is the preeminent Christian scholar in America on the subject of the Talmud and Judaism. And this book is must reading for you to understand what Judaism is and what it's not. Most Christians think Judaism is Old Testament Jewish religion. It's not. This is the religion of the Pharisees. Judaism is the religion of the Pharisees. It is Talmudism. They just call it Judaism, but it's actually Talmudism, Kabbalism. It is Phariseeism, and this man does a terrific scholarly job of telling you all about Judaism. And when you read the book, you'll understand the title, Judaism's Strange Gods. So that's a book I recommend. Of course, the Matthew Henry Study Bible we carry. This is a Bible that we've carried now for a couple of years, and it's the only Bible that we carry. It's the only in-depth study Bible that I know of that does not teach Christian Zionism, the only book. Matthew Henry is I think the quintessential Bible commentator, and we carry the Matthew Henry Study Bible. This book is one of the most scholarly books ever written on liberty, called Lex Rex, which means the law and the prince. And this is about freedom from a biblical natural law perspective. This is written by a Presbyterian minister by the name of Samuel Rutherford in the 1600s. This book, if you can see on the front row, you see the type? Very small type. If you have reading problems, you'll need a magnifying glass. Even if you don't have reading problems, you might need a magnifying glass. But this book is the quintessential book on natural law, liberty under God, and constitutionalism. This was the book that spawned so many of the other books in America relative to liberty. Lex Rex, The Law and the Prince, it's an unbelievable read. You will not read it quickly, but it's worth every minute you devote to it. Elan Pape, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. This is the true history of how Israel began, off of the rape, murder, pillage, plunder, and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. I have a feeling this book will not be in print much longer. We are one of the last major distributors of this book. And people have tried to get rid of this book for a long time. They hate this book. It was written by an Israeli historian, one of the very best historians in Israel, a very honest recollection of Israeli history. Starts from the very beginning, before 1948, leads up to that event, and then what has happened since, still happening today. And the ethnic cleansing of Palestine will forever change your perspective of Palestinian-Israeli events. It'll also open your eyes to the truth about Israel and help you understand what we're saying in our biblical messages. This book is fantastic. Do not let this book go out of print and you not have it in your library, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. Just a quick word, The Real Lincoln by Thomas D. Lorenzo, our good friend. He was here for our 10th anniversary. He's a scholar and a historian. He puts together a lot of books on history. He's written a sequel to this book as well, which we don't carry, but we do carry this one, the original, The Real Lincoln, a new look at Abraham Lincoln, his agenda, and an unnecessary war. Everything you've been told about Abraham Lincoln is a lie. This book here will tell you the truth about the man. I hope that you'll get that book. This is a book that we publish, The Rights of the British Colonies, Asserted and Proved, by James Otis. James Otis is one of America's most important founding fathers, and he's one of the most forgotten. Most Americans, they know about John Adams and Sam Adams and George Washington, Patrick Henry. You say, what about James Otis? And they say, who? They don't know about James Otis. The Fourth Amendment against the protection against searches and seizures and all of that, police abuse, was the result of James Otis. He was the one most responsible for the Fourth Amendment. He was one of the most prominent men of the Revolution. The reason you don't remember him is because he didn't live to see the independence that he worked for so arduously, because the British and their Tory compatriots beat him to death. Almost to death. He was senseless after that, and he died in his early 50s as a result. He didn't live too long after the beating, and so that's why he's not remembered. He didn't have an opportunity to sign the Declaration, or he certainly would have. He was the mentor to John Adams, and John Adams said whenever he heard him speak, and I wrote this in the introduction, when Otis petitioned the court in 1761 in protest of Britain's issuance of general warrants and writs of assistance, which, by the way, the federal courts are trying to go back to that. That's another story. John Adams, who was present in the courtroom when Otis spoke, said, "This was, quote, the spark in which originated the American Revolution," unquote. John Adams says it was James Otis that actually was responsible for our Revolutionary War for independence. He cannot be overestimated as to his importance to our country. If you don't have the rights of the British colonies asserted and proved, he goes into natural law and talks about the importance of natural law to liberty more than any other founding father of our country. Don't miss this book. Have I got some more? All right, this is the first book you ought to read to learn natural law, John Locke's second treatise of government. This is the one that Thomas Jefferson used to write the Declaration of Independence. When you read this book, you're going to think that you're reading Jefferson, because Jefferson took so much from John Locke. John Locke is the founding father of America's founding fathers. This is the quintessential book on natural law. There's not another book better. It's not very big, as you see. You can read it in a relatively short period of time, although you may have to go back to really comprehend it all if you're not used to reading about natural law. But I believe this is the most important book to read, regardless of who you are, Christian or non-Christian, regarding the principles of natural law and liberty in the American government. I think it's extremely important. The last one is a book that I co-wrote with my attorney son, To Keep or Not to Keep, Why Christians Should Not Give Up Their Guns. No matter what you hear from other pulpits, Christians have a divine duty to keep their maintenance of self-defense. It is a divine duty. I've said it before, when my AR-15 or my Glock is outlawed, this preacher will be an outlaw. I will not surrender my arms. This is a book that we took the scriptures. This is from a biblical point of view, not a Second Amendment view. We took the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, all the scriptures, well, at least most of them, and we put in the book so that you can see from a biblical perspective what God says about the divine right of self-defense and how that no man has a right to usurp that authority. So that's a book that my son and I wrote. That's the last one. So how's that a start for your library? That's a good start for your library.